Welcome back to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
This is where we take sources you find interesting and we dive deep, pulling out the key ideas to help you get informed without feeling overwhelmed.
Making the complex a bit more accessible.
Exactly. And today, we're diving into session 71 of the Law of One Material. It's quite a session.
Oh, definitely. Very rich.
Our goal is to go through it, question by question, and really try to offer a beautiful, insightful, and positive analysis. We want to get as much understanding out of this as we can.
There's certainly a lot to unpack. This communication, for context, is from Ra, channeled back on September 18th, 1981.
Right. Okay, let's jump in. The first question, 71.1, it's about the instrument's condition.
Yes, Ra starts with their usual grading in love and light, and then gives an update. Slightly improved vital energy distortions.
But there's a caution here, isn't there, for the support group?
A really important one. Ra advises them not to use that extra vital energy for, like, strenuous physical activity.
Even though the physical side seems stable?
Exactly. Because it could take a harsh toll. It's a reminder about managing energy wisely, even when you feel an upswing. Something for all of us to think about, really.
That's a great point. Okay, question 2, 71.2. The questioner wants to know if you can increase polarity without also increasing harvestability.
Yeah, trying to set up a good starting point for the investigation. Polarity here means, service to others or service to self orientation.
And harvestability is about readiness for the next density.
Right. And Ra connects these very strongly for a third density for our current experience.
Also,
Well, Ra says that increasing your service, whichever way you're polarized, tends to increase the intensity of your light, your spiritual radiance, so to speak.
and that makes you more noticeable for harvest.
Precisely. More harvestable. So Ra concludes it's hardly possible in third density to strongly polarize without increasing harvestability. They're sort of tied together here.
Okay, that makes sense for third density. But then question 3, 71.3, asks about higher densities, fifth density specifically.
And the questioner guesses it might be different there.
It is.
Yes. Ra confirms it directly. In fifth density harvest, polarization has, and I quote, very little to do with harvestability.
Wow. Okay, that's a fundamental shift.
It really is. It makes you wonder what becomes the primary factor then, doesn't it? Maybe integration or depth of understanding.
Interesting thought. Now, question 4, 71.4, introduces this term, working with the unmanifested being for evolution in third density.
And Ra immediately flags this as complex, a many-layered question.
They even seem hesitant about the questioner's angle, saying the desired stria or layer is questionable.
Yeah, it's just we're touching on something really deep, maybe something hard to grasp from our usual perspective. Ra asks for a restatement, basically guiding the questioner towards a clearer path.
Like, let's refine this a bit,
Exactly, which leads perfectly into question 5, 71.5.
where the questioner asks for a definition. What is the unmanifested being?
Ray acknowledges the desire to go deeper and gives a definition. It's the aspect of self that exists and works without reference to or aid from other selves.
Okay, without others. And then Ray connects it to something else.
Yes, this is key. Ray links the unmanifested self to the metaphysical or time-space analog of our everyday space-time self.
Whoa. Okay, time-space versus space-time. Can you unpack that a little?
Sure. Think of space-time as our normal reality physical locations, linear time. Time-space is the metaphysical counterpart. Less bound by linear time, more fluid, maybe more about consciousness than physical form.
So the unmanifested self is connected to this time-space version of us.
That's the idea. And activities like meditation, contemplation, internal balancing, Ray says these align with the unmanifested self, working within that metaphysical time-space framework.
So when you're doing inner work, you're kind of connecting with that part of yourself.
Essentially, yes. You're accessing a different layer of your being.
Fascinating. Okay. Question 6, 71.6, shifts to the death process. What happens when an entity enters time-space after dying in third density?
Right, focusing on the properties of time-space and the healing process after an incarnation.
Ray mentions it's hard to describe accurately.
Very much so. Due to the limits of our language, our sound vibration complexes, as Raya puts it, trying to explain time-space using space-time concepts is inherently difficult.
But they do offer some description.
They do. The hallmark is the inequity between time and space. Unlike here, where space is tangible and time flows, it's like there's an abundance of time, but things are less tangible, more fluid.
Fluid. Okay.
Experiences and even entities are relatively intangible. It's a finely tuned metaphysical state. Ray even mentions particles moving differently, approaching light speed from faster than light speeds. It's really a different reality structure.
And this abundance of time is used for healing.
Exactly. For deep review of the past life, looking at biases, lessons learned, lessons missed. The fluidity allows for penetration, absorption, real healing.
Is the entity just floating around then?
Ross says the entity is somewhat immobile in time-space, which is analogous to how we're sort of fixed in time within space-time. They're placed by their higher self and the form maker for optimal learning.
And they get help.
Yes. Helpers assist in the healing, depending on where they are in time-space.
What does the healing involve?
Fully seeing the life experience against the bigger picture of the whole mind-body-spirit journey. Forgiving the self for, missed steps or perceived failures, and carefully figuring out what needs to be learned next.
Who does this assessment?
Initially, it's all guided by the higher self.
Hmm.
But once the entity becomes consciously aware of its own spiritual evolution during life, then they start to consciously participate in this post-life review process too.
That's really profound. Okay, question 7, 71.7. Is this healing process the same for positive and negative paths?
Ross says the qualities involved forgiveness, acceptance, are analogous, whether in positive or negative time space. But the limitations are different between the realms.
How so?
Well, here in space-time, we can act to correct imbalances now, but we can't change the past life directly. In time-space, you can't correct the past actions, but you can perceive them fully and forgive yourself for them.
So perception in time-space, action in space-time.
Kind of. Decisions made in time-space based on that review and forgiveness set up opportunities to correct things in the next space-time life.
Ah, I see. Raw contrasts the advantages.
Beautifully. Time-space gives the fluidity of the grand overview. Space-time gives the chance to actually do the work, correcting imbalances working in darkness with a tiny candle.
I like that imagery. Question 8, 71.8, just quickly confirms, is the review process similar for negatives?
And Ross says concisely, this is correct. The structure applies, even if the content and goals differ.
Okay. Then question 9, 71.9 zooms out. How common is all this in our galaxy?
Ross states it happens on all planets that give rise to sublogoi, like our sun presiding over Earth. And they estimate about 10% of planets in the galaxy are inhabited.
10%? That's a lot of planets.
It really puts things in perspective, doesn't it? The sheer scale of conscious evolution happening out there.
Yeah. So, question 10, 71.1, asks about stars with planets.
Ra calls this unimportant information, but harmless, which is interesting in itself.
Huh. What's the number?
About 32% of stars have planets, as we understand them. Another 6% have clustering material that might be habitable on some level.
So maybe Ra sees the consciousness as more important than the real estate.
That seems to be the implication. Focus on the life, not just the potential location.
Which leads to question 11, 71.11. The questioner does the math, maybe 3% of stars have inhabited planets, and finds the number of entities mind-boggling, and assumes this whole evolutionary process is universal.
And reconfirms, yes, this octave of infinite knowledge, this evolutionary framework, is consistent throughout the one infinite creation.
With some variation.
Minor ones, programmed by the local sublogoi, but Ra compares them to just regional accents, different ways of saying the same essential word or concept. The core plan is the same.
Wow. So question 12, 71.1 point, follows up on these sub-logois, like our sun. They use free will to slightly tweak a general plan.
That's the deduction, yes. The general plan involves these sublogoi growing through densities, using free will, finding their way back to the creator, the original thought.
And Ra says,
This is correct. It confirms this role of sublogoi as co-creators, shaping evolution within the grand design.
okay. Question 13, 71.13, uses an analogy. Many roads merging into one center, representing individual paths to the same destination.
Ra finds the analogy okay, but somewhat wanting in depth.
What's a deeper perspective?
Rob offers this. Each entity contains all densities and subdensities within itself. The great internal blueprint is one and the same for everyone, regardless of choices made.
So the unity isn't just at the destination, it's inherent.
Exactly. The experiences we have, guided by free will, just explore different facets of that shared inner blueprint, leading back to the source. The materials for the journey are fundamentally one.
That's a powerful idea. Unity within. Question 14, 71.14. Does pure positivity have the same kind of gravity well effect as pure negativity pulling others in?
An interesting question about influence. Ray corrects this idea. Positivity has a much weaker effect in that pulling sense.
Why is that?
Because pure positivity deeply recognizes and respects the free will of others. It attracts, it inspires, but it doesn't compel.
Whereas negativity?
Negativity fundamentally doesn't accept the free will of others. It seeks to control, to conquer. So in a highly negative environment, the pull on others is constant coercive.
And a positive person in that environment would prioritize others' free will, potentially limiting their own influence.
Exactly, because the negative entities are actively seeking conquest, while the positive one is trying to allow choice. It highlights a key difference in how the polarities operate.
That's very clear. Okay, shifting gears to magic. Question 15, 71.15. Is magic the ability to create changes in consciousness at will?
Ray finds that definition acceptable, noting it places the responsibility on the adept. But they suggest linking it back to the earlier idea of the unmanifested self.
How does that connect?
In magic, Ross says, you're working with the unmanifested self, its aspects in body, mind, spirit. And this is boosted by activating the indigo ray energy center.
The third eye center.
Associated with that, yes, fed by experience, but especially by the disciplines of the personality, conscious inner work.
So magic is really about tapping into that deeper, unmanifested potential through discipline and focus.
That seems to be the essence. It's an internal process facilitated by spiritual development.
Then question 16, 71.16 asks specifically about white magic ritual. Is its main goal changing group consciousness?
Ra clarifies. Not necessarily. White magic can absolutely be worked just for the self or the place of working.
Why would focusing only on the self be white magic?
Because aiding your own polarization towards love and light positively affects the whole planetary vibration. It's that ripple effect again. Inner work contributes to the collective.
Right, interconnectedness. Question 17, 71.170. What are the desired results of white magic? Service, unity, knowing to serve.
Ra calls those commendable phrases, but points to something deeper. The heart of white magic is experiencing the joy of union with the Creator.
Ah, the direct experience.
Yes, and that joy, that connection, will naturally radiate out as service, unity, etc. Ra also mentions sexual magic, used carefully by positive adepts, as a powerful way to join body, mind, and spirit with the Creator.
So the core is union, and service flows from that.
Precisely. That union should be the foundation.
Okay. Question 18, 71.1 alt tune lists potential rules, special place, ring, close, time, sounds, group goal.
And Ra has a great analogy here, commenting on these as like a mechanic tuning instruments. They're details, mechanics, not the art itself.
So less important than the intention.
Much less. Ra even says the least important is the time of day, though regularity can help structure things for some. The inner state is what matters most.
That's liberating. Okay, question 19, 71.19. Why did Ra seek out this group? Just to communicate the law of one.
Partially, Ra says. But also, they wished to attempt reparation for distortions of the law they felt responsible for from past, maybe naive, actions.
Reparation. Wow, that adds another layer.
It does. Humility and responsibility, even from a being like Ra.
So, question 20, 71.21. Is the material covered enough for those reparations, if published?
Ra doesn't expect full reparation, expressing respect for the effort, but acknowledging limitations. The attempt is seen as more important than achieving complete success.
And language is a limitation.
A big one. Ra says language can only illuminate these concepts somewhat. Full undistortion is hard to achieve.
Understood. Question 21, 71.21 asks about how Ra searched to understand time-space better.
Ra uses another analogy, looking at a spectrograph, like a detailed analysis of elements. They knew the elements or vibrations needed for stable communication.
Like a specific frequency signature.
Sort of. They compared their color chip, their requirements to the spectrographs of many individuals and groups over a long time. This group matched.
And they did the search in time-space.
Yes, where entities and groups are perceived as vibratory complexes and harmonics. It's a perception based on resonance, outside their linear time.
Incredible. Question 22, 71.22. What's the most important product of this communication? The questioner guesses it's a tool for partial enlightenment for people aware of their evolution.
Ra confirms this is correct, but adds that this is the goal of all experiences and artifacts entities encounter, not just this contact. Everything is potentially a tool for enlightenment.
A good reminder. Ra then notes the instrument needs to conserve energy better.
Yes, a practical point. Recommends holding back an energy reserve to lengthen sessions as transferred energy was low, signaling the end. They offer one brief query.
Which brings us to the last one, 71.23. Can the group do anything to improve contact or comfort?
Ra acknowledges their care and gives one instruction. Remain fastidious about the alignment of the physical items used in the sessions. Precise alignment matters.
Attention to detail.
Then Ra closes, expressing thanks, leaving in love and light, and offering a blessing. Adonai.
A really comprehensive session.
Absolutely packed with insights.
So looking back at this whole dive into session 71.
Mm.
What really stands out for you? Anything particularly striking?
For me, the whole discussion around time-space versus space-time, especially the healing process after death, that idea of the grand overview versus working in darkness with a tiny candle
Mhm.
is just so evocative.
It really is. It gives such a different perspective on life and death.
And the nuances of polarity,
Hmm.
how it relates to harvestability differently across densities, and how positive and negative influence work differently because of free will. That felt really key.
Yeah, the free will distinction was huge. For me, I think the concept of the unmanifested self and linking it to time, space, and our inner work like meditation,
Hmm.
that really resonated. It feels like it opens up a whole dimension to self-understanding.
Definitely. And the idea that magic is fundamentally working with that unmanifested self, powered by inner discipline and the indigo ray,
Yeah.
it demystifies it while making it profoundly personal.
And the Ray's own mention of seeking reparation, that adds such a human, well, not human, but relatable element of growth and responsibility.
Humility, yeah. And underpinning it all, that constant theme from question 13, that deep internal blueprint we all share, that unity within us.
That's the big one, isn't it? That regardless of the path, the choices, the experiences, there's a fundamental oneness already present inside each of us. It
Yeah.
makes you think, how does that internal blueprint express itself in your life right now?
Hmm. Perhaps thinking about how that fluid nature of time-space, where review and forgiveness happen, might change how you view your own past or future possibilities, even from here in space-time.
Lots to ponder there. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into session 71.
It's been a pleasure. Namaste. I am you, and you are me.